Welcome back to Cage Cash. Here we are, episode, what are we, Ryan? 5 or 6 here?
Episode 5, I think, John.
Episode 5, we're heading in. We're talking UFC Vegas 71. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm good, John. We're here on Thursday recording the pod. Had UFC 285 last weekend. Put out a little bit of content for that. Didn't see a YouTube video from us. Apologize for that, but getting back into it this week and really excited to kind of break down this card. It was a crazy one last week. I mean, you know, the co-main event in Grasso getting the job done, pretty crazy. Getting the submission over Valentina was interesting to see those odds, open back up this past weekend. Valentina's still a 2-1 favorite, but it's just crazy. It shows you, right? She was winning that fight pretty much the whole time, even though it was a close one. And then got caught, and then John Jones did what he said he was going to do. I was pretty surprised and impressed. Gon looked like he threw in the towel or something. I don't know. It wasn't as a guy. I put a little bit on Gon there towards the end of the night, and it was a pretty weak performance. For not really fighting too hard for your money there. It didn't seem like so.
Yeah, I'd say Gon, he definitely seemed maybe moment a little big going up against John Jones.
For sure.
Like he kind of right away was throwing some pretty ugly punches, taking down, and I'll let the listeners know. So it was the first time this last weekend we were able to watch it since we started the podcast as a group. We were both together. And a funny story, we had our dad watching UFC, which is a rare occurrence. We got him in for a few fights, and we were hyping up the main event all night, telling him how great it was going to be, telling him God could be a big challenge, all this. Next thing you know, fight's over 2 minutes. He's dead. He's like, that was a waste of time. It was a great card overall, but definitely a little anticlimactic on the main event.
Yep, for sure. But excited. Already got a bunch of bets that I've got lots of money line plays that I'm liking this week. So really excited to break this down. Peter Yan, one of my favorites, honestly. Been on a bit of a skid here. Lost that decision to O'Malley. So, will he get back on track here against Merab? Really excited to kind of break it down and talk about it. But let's get into it, John.
Yeah, let's hop in. So like you said, we got Yan versus Davisheli. Saturday, March 11th, starting off at 6 p.m. And let's get into the prelims. The first fight we got, you got it pulled up right there. We have Carlston Harris against Jared Gooden. Gooden is replacing the Nurmagomedov who is in there. There's an illness, I believe, with him. But we have Harris coming in at I think the odds, and they have late odds. Not many books are having it right now, but I was seeing minus 305 for Harris, plus 240 for Gooden. Ryan, what do you think here?
Yeah, so Jared Gooden used to fight in the UFC and is going to get the call back after doing a really nice job on the regional scene, and gets the fight here on short notice against Carlston Harris. Was okay in the UFC, right? Had some kind of tough fights. Lost to Alan Juban, Nurmagomedov, and Randy Brown. And then on the regional scene, got done what he needed to do, except losing to Kasagane, who's fighting on PFL again this weekend as well, and had a good little run in the UFC. So it's an interesting spot for him. I like him overall, but I think this fight really favors Harris. I think the camp is really going to help him here, right? Like he's a guy who's gonna use all of his tools, and is fine to kind of take the fight to the mat, keep the fight standing. I think he'll be just a little bit better everywhere when it comes to this fight, and I can just see him, really taking it wherever he needs to, right? The last fight he had in the UFC was to Shavkat, right? So this will be a nice little change up. And we saw before that, right, was on a really good run of form to kind of start off his UFC career. So I like him to get back to that and get the job done here. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun fight to kind of start off the card. I was interested to see Nurmagomedov. Actually, I think he's kind of a bum. This was the first time you know, he was actually the underdog in this fight. Heading into it. Now Jared Gooden will be the big underdog coming in on late notice here. But any thoughts on this one, John? While I get the lines pulled up here as well.
Yeah, like you said, I think I agree with Nurmagomedov. Kind of a mysterious last-minute illness coming in as an underdog. Definitely makes you think. But I think this will be a really interesting fight. Harris is coming in, like you said, 1 year wait after fighting Shavkat, which is clearly a big-time fight, as we've seen what Shavkat has stayed up to. And then you have Gooden coming in off 2 weeks. So it's really a question of is there any rust there with Harris? I agree with you. Big favorite. But you've seen some fighters go on some runs when they're able to fight a few times, especially if they're avoiding damage. So I think that'll be an interesting question going into it. But I agree with you. I think Harris is going to be able to control this fight. I liked him by decision, but this probably with these odds, especially with this late of a change, I'd probably stay away from it. But
Yeah, I'm gonna be staying away as well, John. I've got no plays here. I'd be leading Carlston Harris though, as we talked about. Yeah, no props even up for this one yet, but I think the line's priced pretty accurately. But I'll just kind of sit back and watch this one. Yeah, let's
right,
keep it
I
moving.
like it. Let's keep it moving. The next fight we got flyweight Tyson Nam versus Bruno Silva. You have Nam coming in plus 135, 2-1 in his last three fights against Silva minus 165. He's won his last two. Ryan, what are your initial thoughts here?
Yeah, so we're seeing Bruno Silva back in the octagon here. First time in almost 2 years since he's been in there, but really liked what we were seeing from him before he kind of stepped out of the spotlight for a little bit. Has been nursing up some injuries and kind of getting back to health, but still a pretty young guy at 32. Is fighting out of Fight Ready in Phoenix, so he's coming out of a good camp, and I like him a lot in this matchup, honestly. So Tyson is he's the power puncher at 125. That it's very unusual, and he's 39 years old, right? So he's very live to maybe get that early knockout, but I really think there's so many paths for Silva here. So I do have a bet on Silva already. Got him kind of earlier in the week, and we can take a look at the odds here. Silva is still only about a 2-1 favorite. Opened actually as the plus 130 underdog, so the market quickly adjusted there. But yeah, I like Silva just have more paths and more ways to kind of win minutes here. So whether it's Silva to kind of find his own KO, because I think Nam is often just kind of sitting back and waiting for it, and he could get rushed. He is 39, right? Or to just win a decision and out volume him over time. I think both of those could be realistic paths to victory. So I'm pretty confident in Silva this weekend, and yeah, I'm excited to kind of see him back in there, and think Nam might finally be on his way out. So John, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. A bet that stood out to me, minus 145 for this fight, not to go the distance. I think it's going to be something where, like you said, Silva may be able to find a decision path to victory, but Nam coming off a win against Odie Osborne, who we just saw put up a really good performance against
Mm-hmm.
Charles Johnson as the younger fighter. It shows Nam really is still, it was only 6 months ago, still a live KO guy. I think they're both coming off back-to-back finishing fights. I think there's a lot of good value there. I'm going to Nam just from a fan perspective. I think might be able to land something. And like you said, there's not many guys like him in the weight class. So always an exciting guy, but definitely hear what you're saying. But yeah, I'm
Yeah, and
going
I mean,
violence. I'm betting on violence.
to me, I think this could be an interesting spot to look at. That KO in round one, right? Because we kind of talked about it. That's probably his win condition here more often than not, is one of those early KOs. So Maybe look for a round one, round two finish for Nam if you're going to play it that way, or maybe a later rounder by decision for Silva if you're leaning towards him. Get a little bit of a better price, but two good ways to attack that one, I think.
Agreed. Let's move on to the next fight. We got the bantamweights now. We have Tony Gravely coming in 23-8 against Victor Henry La Mangosta. Couldn't tell you what that means, but I'm sure the name like Victor
Sure
Henry,
as well.
it's got to have some good meaning. Minus 145, 22-6. Ryan, anything that stood out to you here?
Yeah, John. This is going to be a good fight. Probably the one I'm least confident in on the card overall this week. I think both of these guys have had their moments that we've seen in the UFC, right, and have put in some pretty good performances. Victor Henry was regional scene guy for a long time, and then came in and fought Hani Barcelos like a year and a half ago, and just looked like ridiculous, amazing. Won that fight as like a plus 500 underdog. People very high on him. Fights a Sun Sao later that year, and loses to the 40-year-old, right? So there he just couldn't get his volume going, and I think it's going to be a situation where Henry's going to want to keep this on the feet. Gravely is the wrestler, right, and is going to want to get this to the mat and use his wrestling to really implement that. My concern with Gravely is I think he has an awesome wrestling game. It's just like he seems like he's fallen in love with his hands a little bit and trusts himself on the feet. I don't think he's better on the feet than Victor Henry, right? So if I'm Gravely, I'm working against the cage and making this an ugly, dirty fight. I'm just trying to grind out a decision more than anything. But man, I don't know, John. Do you have any thoughts on this? I'm really still at a loss for a pick, and
Yeah, I think it's
not really sure which
interesting.
way I'm going to go.
I think, like you said, Gravely's great wrestler. One thing with Henry, he does have that advantage on the feet, but he's got 8 wins by submission in his career. So it could be something where it's kind of a tough choice for Gravely if he feels that there's a threat, especially with Henry from the bottom or making any submission attempts. It could be kind of interesting stylistic matchup. Yeah, I'm kind of leaning your way. I don't have a strong read on this one. I think Henry has a few maybe more paths here. Like you said, looked really good against Barcelos. I think, yeah, I think I'd go Henry, but it's definitely a toss up. I think it's well priced right now.
Yeah,
Any
and we take
movement
a
on it?
look at the line, looking pretty steady. This one stayed the most consistent out of all of them since it's opened. So yeah, pretty fair line. I think it could go either way. I'm gonna go with Tony Gravely. I think he can implement the wrestling. I'm still not completely sold on Victor Henry. I don't know if that Barcelos fight was really just like the flash in the pan, right? And just
Mhm.
like looked amazing that one night. It's unusual to see happen in MMA, but who knows, because we didn't really see quite that level of performance on the regional scene. Or he had a good line of cocaine or something before the fight, right? And was dominant that night. Who knows? So I'm going to trust in Gravely to implement the wrestling and get this done. And if I'm betting this, I'm betting him by decision for sure. The KO line plus 575, by decision plus 235. I'd be interested to see where some of the other books open it up at. If you can get it plus 250 or better, I think that could be worth a look on Gravely there. So, wow, starting it off with what, 2 or 3 we're disagreeing on. So it'll be an interesting start to this card, John. We'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm sure all the loyal Cage Cash listeners out there know who to side with in the toss ups, and I'd say it's likely me. But with
That's
that
right.
said,
That's right.
I'll take the last word on that. Let's move on. We have a flyweight women's matchup between JJ Aldrich coming in minus 240 against Arian Lipsky plus 200. You got Aldrich, 11-5, coming off of the loss to
Arian.
Blanchfield. Aaron Blanchfield's worked through division one by one. But Lipsky also coming off a loss. She was fighting Priscilla Kacharia, lost by KO. And Lipsky 7-4 in the UFC, or sorry, Aldrich 7-4 in the UFC, going in against Lipsky, who is 3-5 in the UFC. Ryan, did anything stand out here?
Yeah, John. So it's unusual that I do this, but as soon as this line opened, I hammered Aldrich for 3.5 units. So I think she has a ton of paths to victory here. I think Lipsky sucks. Like Queen of Violence is a very poor nickname for this girl. She is not very good. She loses to low level competition. And I'm really high on JJ Aldrich, right? Like she's what lost to Sabina Mazo, but that was 3 years ago. Has looked really good in all of those fights since, and lost to Aaron Blanchfield, right? But was having a really good first round there, and looked really good. And as you said, John, like 7-3 in the UFC, right? So already 10 fights in her UFC career, has really fought a good level of competition, or 7-4, I should say, right? So at 30 years old, has spent a lot of time in the UFC, and just I think is better everywhere. So at that line, I just jumped on it. I think she could get it done inside the distance, but yeah, I'm not really messing around with it. And if we look at the line now, I think it's shot way up. Where is it here? We've got her at minus 400. It's coming down. So if you look on like Bet Online, it's coming down to about minus 300, but still pretty crazy. And I wouldn't be paying that for a women's fight, but she's a confident parlay piece for me this weekend. I think she'll be a pretty decisive victor. Any thoughts on it, John?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think Aldrich put together a really good stretch of 3 victories. Lost the tough one against Blanchfield, but I think that's going to be kind of major theme. A lot of the fights and the best ones in the division are going to have losses against Aaron Blanchfield. And I think this fight will be big, kind of put her name back in the top contender series as a kind of rising fighter within the division. I saw on there, I think minus 106 for by decision. I think that's just a strong bet, especially in a
It's a
women's
great,
fight.
really, is that a line out there right now? That is
Aldrich wins by decision.
wow, look at that. That's a great line in my mind, right? Because I think people are expecting Aldrich to roll here, right? And
Mhm.
that's a fair expectation, but you also need to keep in mind like the analytics of these fights,
Yeah.
right? And like how much women's fighting goes to decision, right? So you check out some of those tools, right? And you can quickly kind of calculate what kind of overpayment or underpayment you're paying versus the expectation, right? And here, you know, getting pretty much even money on a minus 400 women's fighter to win by decision is a really nice look. So that might be something I continue to jump on, because as I said, I really do like Aldrich in this matchup to get it done. That might bite me, but I like her here this weekend, so we'll see.
Yeah, totally agree. She's got 2 wins by KO, 9 by decision, 0 by submission. I think there's too much
Mm-hmm.
value there to pass up on it. She might make a statement, be able to finish this one off. I agree with you. I think she's a far superior fighter, but you kind of got to play those odds when they give them to you. But let's move
For
on.
sure.
Next fight we have. Let's see. We have bantamweight fight between the United States, Mario Batista coming in at 11-2, minus 900. He opened up one of the biggest, or the biggest by far, favorite on the card. He's going up against Argentina's Guido Canetti, the Ninja, 10-6, opened up at plus 600. Ryan, how does Canetti pull off the upset in this fight?
I only have one way for people to bet this fight, okay, and that is by Guido Canetti first round knockout. Okay, that is
Wow.
the only playable line in this fight. So let's go and take a look at it. Let's see what it's at. I jumped in for $5 at plus 5,000. Let's see where it is now. Here we go. We're gonna see Kennedy KO round 1. Look at that. It's dropped. It's
Wow.
dropped. It's dropped big.
Dropped like a stone.
Dropped like a stone. So you can still get it at plus 2,800 on Bet Rivers. I think, so they open it up at a more reasonable price. But I mean, they plus 5,000, that's an implied probability of about 0.5%, right?
Wow.
And Guido Canetti has power, if anything else, right? Like he is 43 years old, is kind of a bottom of the barrel dude, but is really tough, throws with a lot of heat, right? And like I think Mario Bautista is good and like has had a little nice run here, but like he's fighting pretty low level for the UFC competition, right? And like who knows? Like you could always get caught. So like I thought it was worth a bet. Yeah, I Bautista should roll here. But I think that's the only way you can bet it, right? Because the lines are just unplayable otherwise, and Bautista doesn't warrant. Like sometimes we see big favorites with deserving, right? But in this case, I really don't understand it. So yeah, I'm going to be rooting and looking
Yeah.
for Guido at 43 to get that first round KO and kind of stop the rise of Mario Bautista this weekend. So
Yeah, I'm admittedly a little upset. I didn't get any tips from you on that one. Just that line movement. Come on. What day did you lock that in?
I think so. Usually they'll release them like Monday, Tuesday. And it just depends. But yeah, this one I got on Bet Online on Monday or something. Because you just gotta the opening line was silly in my mind,
Yeah.
right? And I almost bet the money line, but then I was like, he's not. If this fight gets extended, he's losing, right? But you never know. He could run in and do a flying
I mean, he's got two
flying
fights.
kick.
He's got two fights or 2 wins in the
I
calendar.
mean, 2 wins in a row, right?
Yeah.
Two wins by finish in a row, right? So like he's not and he's been fighting a lot, right? So 11 months ago, 5 months ago, like he's active. I
Yeah.
think it's worth a play. So
I agree. I think most of the times you see lines like this, it's a guy either no UFC experience or a lot clearer path. Like you said, I mean, I think Batista's deserves to be a heavy favorite.
he's fine. Like he's good, right? But like beating Jay Perrin, Brian Kelleher, and Benito. Okay, Benito Lopez pretty good, right? But Brian Kelleher like on the decline. Jay Perrin's pretty ass. Lost to Trevin Jones, who like Cody Garbrandt just beat, right? So like I don't get this one.
Yeah.
And he should win, right? But like for the minus 1,000, whatever that gives him, right? Like a 5% probability of winning the fight. I think that's a really really weak,
No, I
a really
agree.
bad line.
I think
So
people might be able to get in like it's moving already. People are gonna fights like these. I feel like you got a lot of people that come in late, either throw them in a parlay or try to make it quick buck. So might get even more movement, might be able to get some more value on that money line as the week.
yeah, who knows, John? Like, I mean, if we've seen lately a lot of times too, right? Like they're taught as a little less sports right now. There's no NFL. So like there's an excess of UFC bettors at this time of
Yeah.
the year, right? Because there's not a lot else.
Liquidity, high
Right,
liquidity.
exactly, right. So a lot of these lines, as you get later in the week, will get steamed. So you kind of got to get in there early if you're looking to play money lines, unless you got a good read on a dog, and are
I think that's
being a
gonna have
little
to be
deviant
the
going
Cage
against
Cash
the.
dog of the week. We're gonna be a Canetti.
Yeah, we're a
Guido.
Canetti.
Yeah.
We might have to do a little deep dive on Guido. See if we could get him on the show after he
Hey,
pulls off
we were early.
this first round KO. So
Exactly. Yeah, Ryan will pay for a trip to come
that's
talk
right.
with us if that
That's
hits.
right. That's
All
right.
right. let's move on. One of my favorite fights of the night. We have the middleweights. We have United States 7-0, Cedric Dumas, the Reaper, going up against the United States Josh Fremd, 9-4, coming off 2 straight losses.
The
Dumas
Yins
at -140. I was listening to an interview. Do you know the background of his name, or his nickname, the Reaper?
I do not. That's what they called me in college, though, John.
Good to know. You and Cedricus have many similarities.
Many things in
But,
college.
well,
Many
I
things
don't
in
know if it was
common,
the
huh?
same reason. Cedricus was known for smoking J's in the graveyard. Uh,
What?
well,
Okay,
not
that's
all
a
funny. It is to honor people in his life, but just a
that's
kind of funny.
respect.
He's like, they're like, why they call you that? He's like, I was always smoking in the graveyard.
That's a wild thing to say.
All right, but
Yeah,
anyways, he's coming in 7-0. Really exciting fighter. His background is mainly street fighting, actually, in Florida, and only 7-0, limited experience. Came into Dana White's Contender Series, got the guillotine choke over Matej Peñas, um, and that was kind of interesting fight. He was kind of being really underrated, I would say, in the Contender Series, at least by his own account. There was not a lot of people who thought he could come in with so little experience and find success. But I mean, he's got all the skills you want. He's 6'2", long reach. He's going to have a nearly 3-inch, or 3-inch reach advantage in this fight. I think he's a really exciting fighter, and I'm interested to see how he does here. Ryan, what are your thoughts on the overall fight?
yeah. Just taking a look at where this line is now. You talked to me about Dumas earlier in the week and did some research on him, and I like him. He's a lot of fun. He definitely kind of has that street fighting mentality and style to him a little bit, right? Just very aggressive and in there, but he's very well rounded as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like has had a pretty extensive. When I had kind of heard his background, right, and you kind of give me that backstory, it doesn't sound like a guy who had like 15 amateur fights, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But like has been very busy since he got into MMA, which I really like to see, right? Now, with where this line is, I might be taking a look at Josh Fremd. The
Okay.
only reason I say that is I just don't. Dumas hasn't fought anybody, right? Like I think everybody who was fighting on the regional scene was complete like garbage can, and he has the one win on the Contender Series, right? So like I think he is a good fighter and definitely has the kind of chance to finish and get this done, and that's what I'll be rooting for, right? But if we're trying to see where the value is right now, I think Fremd could be a look. Even by decision or something, right? Like he could implement his wrestling. I just think he's been in the UFC, right? Has that experience. I just don't know that at almost -200 now, right?
Oh, wow.
So that's a 7 in 10 chance, right? That they're expecting him to win the fight. I don't know that I'm lining it there myself, right? UFC newcomers always can struggle. So yeah, I'll be rooting for Dumas, but I'm gonna actually pick Fremd this week and take him by decision.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I mean, the line movement definitely changes it a lot. I think, like you said, you got people coming in, maybe not following it as close as you are, seeing that 7-0 record. Obviously, all the kind of skills that stand off with Dumas. But yeah, I think that's definitely, as it keeps creeping upwards.
We'll
Definitely.
see, and we'll see where this line closes, right? Like I do like Dumas still to win this fight. But man, if you end up getting Fremd to much above +200, I think that could be worth a look. So we'll see how it goes, Joe.
What's Dumas inside the distance, if you can?
Dumas inside the distance. I was taking a look at that. It opened like minus 105, right? I
Oh, wow.
almost bet that, I think. It's down to minus 130, plus 105. Okay. So I was looking at it right around here, and didn't pull the trigger. But that is kind of the win condition I like more than anything, right? Like I like Dumas inside the distance or Fremd by decision would kind of be the two angles I'm looking at, right?
Yeah.
Because I think if this gets extended, we haven't really seen, Dumas's gas tank tested, and Frem, if anything, has got some solid wrestling, right, and has been there before and done it. So I think two kind of good ways to look at it. But who are you going to go with this week, John? You taking your
Mm,
boy SD the
I
Reaper?
got to. I mean, give that backstory. You got to. I'm gonna
Mm,
go the Reaper second round submission.
yeah, I like the sub. The sub could be interesting too. I don't know what that's at, but the sub is at plus 320. That's not a good enough line to me.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
so he's having some. The odds are getting kind of.
that's the thing, right? Like you got to be careful on some of these, and like even you see some of those juicy plus money numbers, and they seem nice, but man, plus 300 that's not good enough for me to even wet my beak. So let's keep moving, Joe.
Agreed. All right, next fight. I got two more prelim fights here. We have bantamweight Rafael Asuncao. You said it earlier, but that's it.
Sunso, yep,
All right,
yep.
going up against the UK's Davy Dangerous Grant. Asuncao 27-9, opened up at plus 135. Davy Grant opened up minus 165. Obviously, we touched on Asuncao earlier in relation to Henry. And as you can see there, that's been his only success within about the last 4 years. Grant hasn't been incredible, coming in 1-2 in his last three. Two older fighters, obviously 40 years old and 37. Kind of interesting fight, hard one to predict, I think. But Ryan, what do you see here?
Yeah, John. So this is a really good one. I think this could be a lot of fun. I'm a big Davy Grant fan, so I don't know if you've seen much of him in the past, but he's a really fun, just kind of like little scrappy guy who's throwing a lot of volume, right? Is right in your face, tough, mean, and fights hard, right? We go back and look at his record here. He's actually fought Marlon Chito Vera twice in his career, and beat him back early in his
Oh,
career. So back in 2016, beat Marlon Vera. Marlon obviously came back and leveled up his game, and went on to beat him as well. But Davy Grant's a good fighter. We've seen a lot of good things from him. He hasn't been, nearly as active as I wish he has been. Right, I wish he came into the UFC a little bit earlier because he's just a fun fighter to watch, and we're kind of getting towards the end of his run. But then we've got a Sunsao over on the other side, right? Who, as John said, prior to beating Victor Henry, who kind of had that flash in the pan performance, was 0-4, right? So I don't know how much we can trust him. Now, the difference is the level of competition, right? So, like, we go down and look at the list here: Ricky Simone, Cody Garbrandt, Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Moraes, right? Beats Rob Font, like, is beating Aljamain Sterling, the current champ, right? So it was 2017, right? And that is when he was 37, not 40, and it's like
yeah.
a lot of times you are retired by this point, right? Like after you fight the Cody Garbrandt and it's your third straight loss or something, you're done. And it's like, can he turn that corner? Now, he looked good in the fight against Victor Henry, right? And was good defensively. But how good can he continue to be? So where's this line at
We've
currently,
seen
John?
some movement. So we've actually seen Grant move down to minus
Yeah,
140, which is pretty interesting.
yeah. So, this is one I've been looking at all week, and I'm glad I haven't pulled the trigger and didn't pull it early. If I'm gonna be looking to bet on Grant as we get closer to fight night, I think. I just think I think he has more paths to victory. and is going to be better and more active on the feet. And I think he's going to be a more damaging striker as well. Um, you know, we've got really good defense from Assunção, but I don't think that he really has the tools right now, unless he can kind of get Davy Grant in a bad position on the ground and find that submission to get him out of there. So yeah, I'm there's something I'm not seeing clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Davy Grant in this matchup. And if we take a look at the line, right, it opened actually minus 155, but he was down there, you know, he was hovering about minus 165 for a while, and then as we've gotten into this week, he's gotten a little closer to par, and it seems like a spot where people might continue to jump on, right? So that's what we got to remember too, as sometimes the big favorites get bigger, you know, as people are pouring money into these cards, right? A lot of people are loving to jump on like the short underdogs, right? Because it's like it's an easy plus money spot. It's like, oh, they could probably win, you know, and it's like they don't. It's in their minds, it's a realistic bet, right? So I think we see it a bit at both sides a lot of the time this time of year. So interesting.
So do you think when you see movement like that, especially leading like late week, do you think it's more that, like you're saying, people just jumping on it, kind of just
It's both.
money?
I mean,
or do you think, like, would you expect there to maybe be like a Sunstyle looking really good at the weigh-ins? Like, how much do you think that predicts it?
so I mean, none of that's even happened yet, right? So like, it's interesting to. I'm always curious on these kinds of things, right? I think it's just like when people are focusing. So a lot of times, you know, and maybe we'll do a video about this sometimes, a lot just on kind of line movement and because it's interesting in MMA compared to other sports, we'll see a lot of line movement really early, right? So like Bet Online is usually the first one releasing any of these lines compared to all the other books in the world, right? Bet Online puts them out first for MMA and pretty much every MMA event. So props to Bet Online, but there are, you know, I'm sure there are 100 or so MMA sharks, right?
Yeah.
Who place those $1,000, you know, who have $1,000 units, right, and place those early initial bets and quickly swing. You know, they quickly tell Bet Online whether they set a good line or a bad line, right? And they quickly adjust based on that. So that's where, you know, we kind of get those early huge swings in line movement, and then it's kind of the rest of the general public coming in. And then obviously, you know, if we see some late movement, that could be due to a weigh-in or something like that. But I haven't, in my mind, right, John, you asked that question, I haven't seen anything. Nothing has changed as I've capped this fight, you know, so far this week. I haven't seen anything, you know, and I capped Grant around a minus 175. You know, and to me, this is, you know, when he opened around there, I was like, okay, there's not much value. As he kind of gets closer to evens, and it looks like it might even get there, right? We're already seeing the Sunsow kind of get down to even money. So I think Grant's an interesting look this weekend. So keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on Ryan's MMA picks on Twitter. And man, I'm gonna have a lot of units deployed on this card, John. So could be the breakthrough, or either the fall from grace, and we're losing podcast. So
that's why I keep my picks on track.
Yeah, we're gonna need to get you live and published so that the listeners can follow along as well.
It's true. Yeah, and I thought Grant coming in over plus 200 for by decision could be one more look to take.
That's an interesting look because Assunção does have really good defense, I think. So I like that, John. That might be something I take a look at.
Let's move on here. We have a heavyweight fight between Rukash the Bull Brzeski coming in 8-2, coming off a loss, opened at plus 145 against Carl Williams, 7-1, 4 straight wins coming from the Virgin Islands. Shout out the Virgin Islands.
USVI, baby.
He's coming in minus 170. And if you want to take a quick look around, he's already shooting down, I believe it's minus 200 right
Yep.
now. The public obviously is a big fan. He's the older fighter, coming in at 33 to Brzezinski's 30.
Wow, mine's 250 now, John.
Wow.
Yep.
All right, so it's moving quick. But what do you see here? Do you agree? Do you agree with that movement?
Yeah, well, let's take a look at
Uh,
my picks here, and we'll kind of see if I did right. So I got Carl Williams for a unit and a half at -135. So beat the line movement on this one. And I got this line right when it opened, and I went back and watched some Rukash Bresky tape, right? And this guy was juiced to the gills about like 3 to 4 years ago, right? On like the Russian regional scene, and was just like kicking trash cans in the face, and then got like suspended for 2 years and has had like two fights since, and like looked horrible in the one win, and then like looked pretty good his last time out, but his body was totally different. Like he was just like, like he looked like he had lost like all the girth and all the juice to him. I don't think he's the same fighter without the steroids. And Carl Williams is a hungry guy. I followed him on Instagram as I started doing the tape for this fight. He's a grinder, one of the first fighters out of the Virgin Islands, to kind of come in and fight in the UFC. And we've seen him be a really high IQ fighter. So he came in against Carlston Harris last, or not Carlston Harris, I should say.
like, wow, that's a
No,
leap.
I'm sorry, Jimmy Lawson, another wrestler, or a wrestler heavy guy. But Jimmy Lawson, the Penn State wrestler on the Contender Series, right, was almost a 3-1 underdog there, and just out wrestled him. And it is just, I think, really strong in a lot of places, and despite being 33, is a really good fighter. And I think Bresky fucking sucks. So
Mhm.
I've got Carl Williams. He's going to be in some of my parlays and stuff as well. He's somebody I'm targeting on DraftKings. Bresky lost to Budai. He probably should have beat Budai, honestly, but he slows down as the fight goes on. I could look at like a later Carl Williams kind of spot. All those things are things I like. If you're on the Bresky side, that's foolish, but I'd be looking something like KO. Just something early, catching him early. He doesn't really have much of a submission game. We've only seen Carl Williams lose by submission that one time. So, man, I like the Virgin Islands to represent here and get the job done. How are you looking at it, John?
Yeah, pretty similar. I like Williams a lot. I'm once again upset I missed out on some of your nice CLV. But he's been a much more active fighter, like you said. Brzezinski, only 2 fights since 2020. And Williams has been in the octagon a lot. What do you know the story behind Brzezinski's no contest in the Contender Series, or is that just
I
a?
think I think that might have been when he pissed hot. Is that right? Let me see.
Uh,
Um, no, or was that, I forget.
I was just curious. There's no. I
Yeah,
agree with everything you're saying. I think it's funny. I think we've seen. I think this line opened really low. I mean, the fact that you got it -135, but that's some good deep case deep study on the Russian
yeah. I
region.
was I was in early on this fight. I don't know why, but I think this was like the early number one fight at the bottom of the Tapology card, right? So like as I started working my way up and doing tape study, that's usually how I do it. Um, and was watching some Lucas Brzeski tape. And sometimes it's not even about the guy you're betting on. It's the guy you're betting against.
Yeah,
Like I trust Breshke
got
to
to play
fight.
the
So
trend in UFC for sure.
that's right.
And I think one of the cooler things in any UFC fight, when you get these guys that are representing countries or areas that aren't traditionally kind of have that support, especially in American major sports, I think it's pretty cool. And if a guy like Williams can get on a little run here, it could be exciting to see the Virgin Islands. And you just got a lot of. I think it's cool that like you can kind of show up from anywhere, get in a gym and become a freaking 7-1 UFC fighter. Like,
Right.
it's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, let's move on to our first main card matchup. We have,
Yep.
let's see, we have a light heavyweight fight between Brazil's 7-0 Vitor Petrino going up against Sweden's 8-1 Anton Turkaj. Uh, Coming off one loss, his only loss in his last fight. Ryan, what did you see here?
John, take a look at the. Why don't you reintroduce with the nicknames again? I think you missed the nicknames in this one.
Well, I certainly did. So first we got Vitor, a cow, Petrino, and then, as I'm sure Ryan is hinting towards, Anton, the pleasure man, Turkaj.
Guys, I'll tweet this out after we get off of here. But he got asked about this by somebody at like the shit this week, and he's like, "Oh yeah, like when I was young, like everyone always asked my dad because I was so handsome and like devilish as a boy, like, oh, your son is so handsome." And he's like, no, he's not handsome, he's sexy. So I was the pleasure boy, and now I am the pleasure man, or something.
I
And
think
it's
this
like,
is a
what, bro?
translation. I think it was a translation thing if it came from his dad.
No, dude, no, he's Swedish. He was speaking in English, bro. It was fucking.
Yeah,
He
but
was
like
just. He was
a
like,
cultural translation.
no, yeah, yes, and no. I think he was just like fucking around as well, right? But anyway, he's a funny dude. He fought in the Contender Series. I wasn't super high on him coming into the Contender Series. Got the win there though, but then they put him up against Gelton Almeida, which is tough for him because he's never going to win that fight. Actually got it for some takedowns and looked better than some people have against Gelton. Then you got Vitor Petrino, who is just like seems like juice to the get. Like he's got that kind of build vibe. Like he's going to go out, look for that first round finish. He doesn't get it. I could see him gassing out. Right. So honestly, this is the closest line fight I think we have on the card. I'm not really sure where it is at the moment. Yep, still about the closest line fight we've got. Money's been coming in towards Turkalj, and that's what I like as well. So he opened as the underdog. I think he's got way better minute winning potential. He's got way better wrestling, and if he doesn't get caught in the first minute or two here, I think he could probably get the job done and either win by decision or like a late finish or something. Because Petrino really hasn't fought anybody, and I think there's a good chance just with like how muscle bound he is and just throws with so much power at the beginning that he is going to slow down in later rounds. So I think taking a look at like a later Turkalj finish or a decision or something could kind of both be interesting looks.
What do
If
you think
not, then
about?
you're kind of the Petrino first round KO in my mind.
Yeah, what do you think about? Correct me if I'm wrong. Turkalj is dropping a weight class here, right, over his normal fights. I believe his last two were at heavyweight, unless I'm
It
wrong.
looks like it, but it looks like so I think he might have fought up. I think he fought up against Almeida just so he could get in. So they did a catch
Uh,
weight at 220, it looks like.
okay.
Um and he fought light heavyweight on Contender Series,
Yep.
right? So I think
Okay.
going forward that's probably going to be his spot. Um and both of these guys are really interesting. And I think Petrino is very alive to kind of get this done in the first round. But if he doesn't, I think that the Turkalj is going to kind of be able to implement it and get things done. So we'll take a look here. Turkalj by decision, as we talked about, you can get a plus 340 out there on FanDuel. I think that's an interesting look. And we could take a look at Petrino KO round one, get around 500 on FanDuel. So I think both of those are kind of interesting looks on this one. But not one I'm like running to the window for either way. What about you, John?
Yeah, I agree. It might be a unfair, or I guess even jaded comparison, but I lost big money on Gabriel Fernandez coming out of the Brazilian scene ripped to the gills,
Mm,
had all the
mm,
highlights. Kind of seemed
mm.
like she might be able to impose herself in the fight. Pretty similar odds, and I got wrecked. I got wrecked there. So
That's right.
comparison, good
And
or
by
not,
in a similar kind of circumstance, right? Where coming in has got the power striking advantage, blah blah blah. And
yeah.
it's like, okay, we've got somebody who's been there before, maybe not like exceed like been super awesome, but has been there, can implement like a
Like you said,
minute winning game
that
plan,
minute
right?
winning, you start winning minutes, they start losing their gas tank, and the fight can really get away from them. And sometimes, especially with 7-0 record, you might be coming not the best competition, not really sure what's your game plan when your back's against the wall. So I agree. I mean, I'm going to go with the pleasure man. Ever since that nickname, I had to jump on that. But let's move on to the next fight on the main card. We have Syed Nurmagomedov, 17-2, going up against Jonathan Martinez, who is 17-4. Nurmagomedov opened up minus 195 with Martinez, the Dragon, out of Plainview, Texas, coming in plus 160. Both fighters coming in 4-1 in their last 5. I think this should be a good matchup. I mean, obviously, we got a Nurmagomedov. Ryan, what do you see here?
Yeah, man, this might be the second fight I'm least confident on the card. I'm not really sure about this one. I think there's paths for both of these guys. Nurmagomedov's definitely the deserving favorite, minus 200. It's kind of getting closer to like minus 250 or something now, I believe. As we go up and take a look at it here, yeah, even more than that now. So at this price, I might be willing to take a shot at Martinez. The big thing is here, I think they're both pretty comparable on the feet. And I just think if Saeed gets in trouble, he can implement that grappling, whereas Martinez can't. So I think it's a pretty well priced line. And both of these guys are good fighters, right? But we've seen Saeed tested even his last time out against Kakhramonov, right? Like he was in some bad positions before he found the finish there. Whereas Jonathan Martinez is a really has had some really good performances, but level of competition like not awesome. This was definitely going to be a step up, but he's really crisp on the feet, and I think we're going to get a fun kind of like back and forth striking match until one of them can kind of implement their will. But ultimately, I think Saeed's going to get it done, and I think he can kind of win the decision by working in some of that grappling as he needs to. That's going to be the way I'm looking on this one.
All right. Do you see any lines or specific that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I like mm, I like Nurmagomedov by decision, right? So that's 170. I'm not betting this fight. I think if you were going to bet it, if you were going to bet the Nurmagomedov side, you wanted to do it right when it opened at like minus 195 or something, right? I think that's pretty fairly priced line. Right now, though, not a lot I'm seeing. If anything, right, like as we talked about, I think there's a good chance that if Martinez can kind of match him in that stand up, that we could see Nurmagomedov go towards that grappling, right? So I think a little poke on the submission or something could be interesting, or even like a later submission, right? Because I think this fight is gonna play out on the feet for at least the first round, right? And like they're gonna kind of be back and forth and get a feel for each other. So a 2 or 3 sub. I don't like that. I'm gonna write that down. For Saeed could be an interesting spot. Just as Martinez kind of tires out, and if he feels like he has an advantage and can finish the fight there, it might be something he goes for. So
Yeah, I like those a lot. I think. All right, so the next fight up, we have a light heavyweight battle between Nikita Krylov and Ryan Spann. Everyone remembers this fight was canceled just a couple weeks ago. I believe it's up at a catchweight 215, barring the delay. Ryan, last time I think we both had Nikita Krylov as we discussed it, but do you see any difference here? And what are your thoughts as we finally get this fight?
Yeah, John, I'm glad that they rebooked this one. Excited to kind of see this one um, this weekend. It's going to be fun. You look down here, you see very close on the Tapology predictions here, right? The big thing everyone's loving is violence. I think it's minus 400 or so not to go to decision. And then, Krylov still kind of the favorite, hovering right around where he was his last time out as well. So, it's going to be an interesting spot. It'll be kind of interesting to see where he closes as well. I still do lean Krylov. I think he has more ways to win this fight. Span's going to be super dangerous in round one, as we know. Um, but I just think Krylov is really elite for this division, and I think he is able to kind of get it done here. Hopefully, implement some of the wrestling, and I think he ultimately gets him out of there by submission. Maybe in the second or third round, once Span starts to slow down a little bit. But yeah, the interesting difference, I guess, will be this is 3 rounds now as opposed to 5, right? Does that change at all? How the way they come out, the way they fight? But man, I think they're still both going to come out swinging early. Most of the action's going to happen in that first round, and not seeing anything that's swaying me off Krylov this week. And might be placing a wager on him at the current odds. So
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Span could come out early, especially like you said, only 3 rounds, won't have to conserve the tank as much. So I think it's if Span can get that early KO. If not, I think Krylov's a more complete fighter. I think he'll be able to either take it to the ground or just outlast and tire out Span. So I'm in agreement. I think Krylov will get the job done.
yeah, interesting. They both weighed in exactly at 213 for the 215-pound catch weight. So I thought that was kind of interesting watching the weigh-ins today.
Yeah.
Both exactly the same. So no big advantage for either of them kind of coming in here. It was Krylov who pulled out last week. Just it sounded like sickness or something the day of the fight, but seems like both are coming in good shape and good health. So glad we're getting to see this one. But sounds like we're both going with Nikita Krylov to get it done this weekend.
Yep, and we should mention, as you can see on Ryan's screen, the Ricardo Ramos Austin Lingo fight was canceled. I believe Ryan, you said Ricardo came in 8 pounds overweight.
8 pounds overweight, which is just like, I don't know, either you had an injury or just like that's bad.
Dang, that's not gonna be
So
happening.
anyway, that fight's been canceled. We did have Jared Gooden come in 7 pounds overweight as well. That fight's gonna go on.
Wow.
Pretty crazy, but coming in on it's been 3 days notice, so I guess I'm not super surprised by the weight miss, but kind of makes you question why they allowed him to take the fight right at 170, or just why this wasn't catch
Yeah.
weight bout as well. So kind of an interesting one there. But a bummer, I had good money locked in on Ramos before the line movement around minus 250. He was up around minus 400. But God, he looked chunky and like out of it on the scale. So 8 pounds is a big miss. That could really be bad for the career long term.
Yeah.
Can't do that to the UFC too many times without some repercussions.
You are right. Let's move on though. Co-main event. We have heavyweights going at it. We have Alexander Volkov against Alexander Romanov. Volkov coming in 35-10, 2-1 in his last 3, while King Kong Romanov coming in at 16-1, 4-1 in his last 5, but he lost his last fight. So Ryan, what do you expect here? It seems like we're finally getting a good heavyweight fight on one of these cards.
Yeah, John, this is a really exciting one. Man, I'm kind of split on a pick as well. But this is going to be really good. So we got Alexander Volkov, who formerly of the M1 fame, has come over to the UFC and done a really great job here. A big name that you're going to know in the heavyweight division, and has kind of fought the best of the best throughout his career. Right, is 2-3 or 3-2 in his last 5. Lost to Gon, beat Tybura, lost to Aspinall. and beat Rosenstrike last time out by KO, right? So he's very dangerous, um, kind of anywhere the fight goes. But on the other side, we've got King Kong Romanov, right, who is a dominant grappler, dominant wrestler, and is going to look to finish this fight early with some big takedowns and then some dominant ground and pounder submission. So, the big thing last time out, we saw Romanov take his first loss in the UFC, his first loss of his professional career. And really what happened there is he gassed out after the first round. I think he had a 10-8 round one, or should have had a 10-8 round one, probably. So it probably should have been a draw, but only got the 10-9 in round one, and then was just out of gas because he couldn't get the finish. So interesting here. The last fight he came in really good shape, and then and he still gassed out. So this time he just weighed in and he's fat again. So I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if he's just returning to the roots and he's like, I'm gonna gas out anyway, so might as well just
go all in.
Get right. But man, the question here, I think Romanov's gonna get him down to the ground early, and it's can he kind of get the finish, and if not, if Volkov can survive and extend this fight, I don't think we've seen anything to prove that, including him showing up fatter on the scales, right? That the cardio has improved. So I don't know, John. How are you looking at this one?
Well, we see they opened up at plus 130, minus 155. Ryan, do you have the odds pulled up? Has there been any movement here?
Yeah, let's take a look. So right now, pretty even.
About the same.
Keeping pretty consistent. We'll look at kind of the violence numbers here. So the fight doesn't go, sitting at minus 260. So got to pay a pretty good price there, but only minus 180 for under 2.5 rounds, which could be an interesting spot, right? As we talked about, I think Romanov round one or Volkov round two, round three are kind of both interesting looks. Or you could go real contrarian and play some overs here, but man, you're going to be sweating it, especially the way Romanov goes out there early and the way Volkov can kind of turn it on and finish it late. So
yeah, completely agree. I think it's interesting. You don't see much this height difference many times in the UFC. You're seeing 6'7" with Volkov, 6'2" with Romanov. It'll be interesting to see if that helps Volkov defend the takedowns, kind of keep his distance. But I agree with you. I think they're both going to be going in looking for a finish. I'm going to go with Romanov, just because I respect the move to go full bulk and see what happens. And I don't know, but I think this is going to be one of the best heavyweight fights we've seen in a bit, especially after even the John Jones return was a bit underwhelming. So hopefully this one,
let's hope,
lives up to it.
Let's hope, right? And I think I agree. I think I'm going to go with Romanov as well. Maybe second round submission. I think the gas tank is going to be. I think it's all a little bit ironic, and maybe the gas tank's a little bit better as he gets a little fatter. Who knows here? I think he'll recognize that Volkov is dangerous and maybe just be a little smarter in his game plan. But I trust Romanov to kind of have more tools here and get it done. If he was still the 17-0 fighter here, I think we'd be paying a much heftier price to kind of get on the Romanov side. So even though he didn't look good in his last one out, I think this might be a good spot to take that recency bias into account and put a little wager down on Romanov. It's not something I've gotten to the window yet for this week, but man, as we get later into the day tomorrow, it might be something I take a look at.
Agreed. Let's move on though. Main event, we have bantamweight, the return of Peter Yan coming in 16-4, going up against Merab Dvalishvili, 15-4, 5 straight wins. Obviously, Yan, one of the greatest at this weight class in UFC history, but he is coming off 2 consecutive losses. And as I said, Dvalishvili, he was a late fill-in, I believe, hasn't had a ton of time, but he coming off at least 5 consecutive wins. Ryan, what is your take here?
Yeah, this is going to be an awesome fight, John. Petr Yan, one of my favorite fighters. But as you said, kind of coming off two losses in a row, losing to Sterling in that split decision, and then losing to Sean O'Malley in the split decision as well. So could very well still be the title title holder at bantamweight had things gone differently.
Yeah.
But here he is, kind of reforced to climb the mountain and fighting a really tough kind of prospect in Marab. The interesting thing, Marab actually 2 years older. It just shows you how long Petr Yan has been at the top, right, and really dominated here in the UFC. So pretty crazy stuff, and just the experience that he has at only 30 years of old. 30 years of age is pretty wild. Peter is great everywhere. He's got some of the best boxing in the UFC, incredible takedown defense, and kind of keeps it safe. He does his best work on the feet, though, for sure. But can also use good kind of inside trips and different tactics to change levels and get the fight where he needs to, right? So he's a pretty smart fighter as well. Sometimes he can get just a little too aggressive, and that can get him caught, right? Maybe into some takedowns or things like that. So I think he's got to stay composed. And then, his other thing, he's finally getting back to the 5-round fight here, which I think is going to be good for him as well. Being in this main event slot, we've seen him kind of start slow in the past and kind of take those reads, and then turn it on as the fight goes on. So I think that 5-round spotlight tends to favor him a little bit more, right? Even in that fight with O'Malley, right? I think just we saw in the first round, right? He kind of struggled to get into it, and then was forced to kind of pressure in 2, and then 3. Kind of had to be a slugfest because they both knew they needed to win the fight, right? I think these extra rounds could be helpful for him. But it's going to be interesting. He's facing Marab here, right? And Marab is just a takedown wrestling machine. One of the all-time greats in the division, really, when it comes to the kind of the takedown offense and being able to just control with offensive wrestling. As you said, right, lost his first 2 fights in the UFC, and then it's been undefeated since.
Eight
Picking up
consecutive.
right, just picking up big win after big win. But man, he beat Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo was, ended up being Jose Aldo's retirement fight. I just think that this is a way higher level of competition in Yan here, and his takedown defense is pretty elite. I know we saw Sterling get him down a few times. Sterling has significantly better jiu-jitsu to kind of keep him and threaten him there on the ground, right? It was, fought that really smart. And even though these guys are going to be, the kind of interesting thing as well, it's going to be that same kind of corner group. Sterling and Marab both fighting out of Sarah MMA in Long Island, right? So Jan can't seem to escape these guys. But I think he's going to kind of finally crack the code, stuff the takedowns as the fight goes on. And, I like him to find the finish here on the feet before the end of it. I'm thinking like 4th or 5th round KO. I'm pretty big on the money line. That's just the way I'm going to play it, because I could definitely see it going to decision as well. Marab's really tough, but I think this is going to be an awesome fight, and I'm really kind of looking forward to it. How about you, John? What are your thoughts as we get ready for this one?
Yeah, I think you make a good point there. Especially with it being a 5-round fight, I think Jan, as you've said, he's been up there at the top for so long. He's going to have that comfortability in the main event, in the 5-round match. Obviously, Merab's been one of the hottest fighters, and I probably like him a little more than Jan, so I'll probably be rooting for Davisheli here. I think you nailed a lot of it. I think Jan's going to be really dangerous on the feet, and if he's able to keep up his defense, and I mean, who knows? 2 straight losses. Obviously, the O'Malley one probably was a little classic UFC judging action. But do you want to show us? Has there been any significant line movement here?
Yeah, it opened a bit closer to even. So Jan opened up the minus 175 favorite, and it hung out there for a while. I jumped in around like minus 200 or something, and it's gonna close. Looks like closer to minus 300 or so. So if you're going to jump on that Peter Yan side, it's time to do it now. Um, but yeah, in this position, Marab decision or something could be interesting to look at. Like fight goes, we're seeing is actually juiced up to about minus 200.
Wow.
So if you're looking for violence, this could be a really interesting spot, right? Getting plus 150 either way for the fight doesn't go to decision, so that could be really great. But obviously the books just aren't respecting Murad's finishing upside in this, right? Plus 1200 and plus 1600
Yeah.
by KO and by submission respectively, right? And that's the thing. That's Murad's game is not necessarily to get the finish. It's just to rack up that control time and rinse and repeat those takedowns. Yan by KO, still get it plus 260 on FanDuel. I think that could be a nice spot, and I bet that closes a lot closer. You can see Bet Online are down to plus 190, so I wouldn't be surprised to see that one close a lot tighter over there on FanDuel as well. But
Yeah, it's
yeah, John, I'm really
interesting.
looking forward to this one. It should be fun. If Jan loses this one, like where does he go from here? Three straight
Yeah.
losses. Obviously, still very elite, still very young, but man, that's gonna be a big kind of bump in the road to come back from and try and find his way back to the title. Because if he wins here, I think he keeps himself right there at the top, right, and doesn't fall too far off the ladder in terms of getting himself another title shot pretty soon. But man, he's gotta go out there and get it done this weekend. That's for sure.
Yeah, it definitely has, I mean, huge implications in the crowded bantamweight weight class. I mean, Marab could shoot himself up there. You would think 9 straight wins, beating Peter Yan, he'd be right at the top. And Aldo back to back. And same thing
Mm-hmm.
with Yan. I think, like you said, it is an interesting spot because I feel like you can get lost in the mix pretty quick in this weight class, especially with
Absolutely.
all the big fighters. But I'm really excited. UFC Vegas 71. I think we have some of the best fights we've seen, at least in these local cards. This for an entire
Mm-hmm.
card, a lot more UFC experience, a lot more betting upside, I would say. Probably some more fun fights. Ryan, do you want to give us any closing thoughts on the card as a whole and maybe send us out?
Yeah, John. So this is going to be a great one. Really looking forward to UFC 71 here. Going to be a live crowd there in Vegas, which will be fun. Not at the Apex there, but yeah, Jan versus Dvalishvili. We've also got Volkov Romanov and Krylov Span. So really looking forward to this card. Make sure to check us out on Twitter. At the Cage Cash Podcast. Check me out, Ryan's MMA picks. Always giving out free picks and predictions to all the fights, both UFC and others. So definitely give us a follow. Still looking for our first comment down below as well. So throw us a like, throw us a
We do.
comment, hit those subscriptions, and we'll see you next week.